Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderstrike and watched the stars bend around them as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. After 6 months of traveling through space, they had finally reached their destination. Behind her ship, 2 more human battleships followed, the UES Liberty and the UES Defiance. These 3 ships carried the hopes of all humanity as they approached the first meeting with alien life. The ships were old, built for fighting wars on Earth decades ago. Engineers had worked day and night to modify them for space travel. They added new engines, life support systems, and radiation shielding. But the main weapons remained the same: massive railguns that could fire metal slugs at incredible speeds. The military leaders thought these weapons might be useful, even though they had no idea what alien ships would look like. "Contact ahead," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from his station. "It's huge, Admiral. Much bigger than our ships." Sarah walked to the main screen and saw their destination. Nexus Prime was a space station the size of a small city, built by the Galactic Trade Consortium. It spun slowly in the darkness, covered in lights and docking bays. Strange ships of different shapes and sizes moved around it like insects around a streetlight. "Open a communication channel," Sarah ordered. A voice spoke from the speakers, but it was clearly not human. The words came through a translation device that made everything sound flat and emotionless. "Human vessels, you are cleared to dock at Bay 7. Representatives are waiting to meet with you." As they moved closer, Sarah could see the alien ships more clearly. They were smooth and curved, made of materials that seemed to glow with their own light. No rough edges or visible weapons. Everything looked clean and advanced. Her own ships looked crude and ugly next to them, like hammers beside jewels. The docking process was smooth. The aliens had good technology, Sarah had to admit, but she felt nervous as she prepared to meet them. Humanity had only learned to travel between stars 5 years ago. These aliens had been doing it for thousands of years. Sarah wore her best dress uniform as she walked through the airlock into the station. The gravity was lighter than Earth's, and the air tasted strange. Captain Thompson from the Liberty and Captain Martinez from the Defiance walked beside her, along with Dr. Harrison, their science advisor. The meeting room was enormous, with a ceiling that stretched up into shadows. Around a curved table sat the alien representatives. Sarah had read about them in the files, but seeing them in person was different. Fleet Commander Zixthara of the Veltar Empire sat across from her. Her species looked like living crystals, with light moving through their transparent bodies. When she spoke, the light patterns changed, and somehow the translation device turned that into words. "Welcome, humans," she said. "We are pleased to meet another species that has achieved faster-than-light travel. The consortium has been watching your progress with interest." Next to her sat Ambassador Kethmer from the Hegemony. His people looked like giant insects, with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected the light. "Your ships are interesting," he said. "Very different from what we expected." The third alien was Trade Minister Volume from the Democratic Systems Alliance. His species looked almost human, except for the blue skin and the third eye in the center of his forehead. "We have prepared a friendship treaty," he said, sliding a datapad across the table. "It will bring great benefits to your people." Sarah picked up the datapad and read through it quickly. Her heart sank as she understood what they were asking. "This treaty requires us to give up our military ships," she said, "and accept protection from consortium forces." "Of course," said Zixthara. The lights in her crystal body pulsed faster. "Your weapons are primitive and dangerous. Kinetic projectiles? How? Crude. You still use physical ammunition like children playing with stones." Kethmer clicked his mandibles together, and what Sarah realized was laughter. No civilized species has used such weapons for millions of years. Energy weapons are far superior, cleaner, more efficient, more precise. Volume nodded in agreement. Your railguns are relics from a barbaric past. We can provide you with proper plasma lances and quantum disruptors. Much better weapons for a modern military. Sarah felt her temper rising, but she kept her voice calm. Our weapons work well for us. We prefer to handle our own defense. The three aliens exchanged glances. Their expressions were hard to read, but Sarah sensed amusement. "Dear Admiral," said Zixthara, "you do not understand. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are raiders, pirates, hostile empires. Your primitive ships would be destroyed in minutes by any real military force. The consortium maintains peace," added Kethmer. "We have the most advanced fleets in the galaxy. Our ships are protected by quantum shields and armed with weapons that can tear apart matter at the molecular level. We offer our protection out of kindness." Dr. Harrison leaned forward. "What about trade? Scientific exchange? Cultural programs?" "All included in the treaty," said Volume. "Once you accept our protection, you will have access to our markets, our technology, our knowledge. But first, you must prove you are civilized by abandoning your violent tendencies." Sarah read through the treaty again. Between the diplomatic language, the message was clear. Humanity would become a client state, dependent on alien protection and technology. Their ships would be scrapped, their weapons destroyed. Earth would become another small world under alien control. "I need to discuss this with my government," Sarah said finally. "We cannot make such an important decision without proper consultation." Zixthara's light patterns shifted to something that looked annoyed. "How long will this take?" "The Consortium Council does not wait indefinitely. Give us 2 weeks," Sarah said. "That is reasonable for such an important decision." The aliens talked among themselves in their own languages for several minutes. Finally, Volume spoke up. 2 weeks. But understand, Admiral, this offer will not remain open forever. The galaxy has no patience for species that refuse to evolve." As they walked back to their ships, Captain Thompson shook his head. "They think we're children," he said quietly. "They think we're primitives with toys instead of real weapons," added Captain Martinez. Sarah nodded grimly. "Maybe that's good. Let them underestimate us while we figure out what we're really dealing with." As the Thunderstrike pulled away from Nexus Prime, Sarah stood at the observation window and watched the alien ships moving through space. They were beautiful and advanced, no doubt about that. But beauty did not win wars. She had a feeling humanity would need to fight very soon, and when that time came, their crude railguns might surprise everyone. Fleet Commander Zixthara returned to her flagship, feeling amused by the meeting with the humans. The primitive mammals actually thought they could defend themselves with their crude kinetic weapons. She had seen their ship designs in the intelligence reports, thick metal plates welded together like ancient armor, with massive electromagnetic cannons sticking out like spears on a fortress. Her own ship, the Eternal Radiance, was a work of art. The hull was made from crystallized quantum matter that could bend light around it. Energy flowed through conduits that ran like veins through the entire structure. The main weapon was a plasma lance that could burn through anything. Powered by a contained miniature star in the engineering section. "Communications. Open a channel to the Consortium Council," she ordered. The holographic display showed the council chamber, where representatives from dozens of species sat in their floating chairs. High Counselor Vexmar, an ancient being whose species had transcended physical form centuries ago, spoke first. "Report, Fleet Commander. How did the humans respond to our generous offer?" Zixthara allowed herself a small pulse of satisfaction. "As expected, High Counselor. They are stubborn and primitive. Their admiral requested time to consult with her government, but I suspect they will refuse our protection. Counselor Dekvar from the Military Advisory Board leaned forward. His species looked like walking trees, with bark-like skin and leaves growing from his arms. Their weapons concern me. Kinetic projectiles can cause significant damage if they strike a ship. Several other counselors made sounds that the translation system rendered as laughter. High Counselor Vexmar's energy form flickered with amusement. Counselor Dekvar, no species has used physical projectiles in warfare for over 10 million years. Their weapons are relics from the Stone Age of space travel. But if they refuse our offer? Asked Trade Counselor Mirdith. Zixthara straightened in her command chair. Then we demonstrate why civilized species accept our protection. A small show of force should convince them. Their 3 ships against a proper consortium fleet will teach them the value of our friendship. High Counselor Vexmar nodded slowly. Very well. You are authorized to assemble a demonstration force. Make it impressive, but not overwhelming. We want to convince them, not destroy them entirely. Understood, High Counselor? I will take 30 ships. That should be more than sufficient. Meanwhile, the 3 human ships were traveling back toward Earth at maximum speed. On the Thunderstrike, Admiral Chun had called a meeting of her senior officers and scientists. Dr. Harrison sat at the conference table with several other experts they had brought for the mission. What's your assessment? Doctor? Sarah asked that Dr. Harrison pulled up holographic displays showing the alien ships they had observed. Their technology is definitely more advanced than ours, Admiral. But I noticed something interesting during our scans of their vessels. Go on. Their defensive systems are entirely based on energy fields. Magnetic barriers, plasma screens, quantum interference patterns, all designed to deflect or absorb energy weapons. But I didn't detect any physical armor or kinetic barriers. Captain Thompson frowned. What does that mean exactly? Dr. Marcus Webb, the fleet's chief engineer, spoke up from the other end of the table. It means they've never had to defend against physical projectiles. Their shields are designed to stop energy beams, not solid objects. Sarah felt a spark of hope. Are you saying our railguns might be effective against their ships? More than effective, said Dr. Webb. I analyzed the energy signatures from their shield systems. They create fields that can deflect plasma and laser beams, but a solid tungsten slug moving at high velocity would pass right through them like they weren't there. Dr. Harrison nodded enthusiastically. It makes perfect sense from an evolutionary standpoint. Every species that achieved space travel eventually developed energy weapons because they're more efficient and precise. Physical projectiles became obsolete, so defensive systems evolved to counter energy-based threats. But humans are still using railguns because we're newcomers to space travel, said Captain Martinez. We haven't had time to develop energy weapons yet. Exactly, said Dr. Webb. What they see as primitive, we can use as an advantage. They're not prepared for kinetic attacks because no one uses them anymore. Sarah stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. How much can we improve our railgun systems with the time we have? Dr. Webb consulted his tablet. With some modifications to the magnetic acceleration chambers and power systems, we could increase projectile velocity to about 15% of light speed. That would give us range and impact force far beyond what they expect. How long would the modifications take? 2 weeks if we work around the clock. We can retrofit all 12 ships in the Earth Defense Fleet. Sarah turned back to the table. Wait, 12 ships? I thought we only had 8 operational battleships. Captain Thompson smiled grimly. Command finished work on 4 more while we were traveling. The shipyards have been working overtime since we left. Earth is taking this seriously. Dr. Harrison pulled up tactical displays showing ship formations. There's something else, Admiral. I analyzed their ship movements during our approach to Nexus Prime. Their formations are designed For energy weapon combat, they stay at medium range and rely on their shields to protect them while they exchange fire. What's their preferred engagement distance? Asked Sarah. About 50,000 kilometers. Close enough for accurate energy weapon fire. Far enough to avoid debris and radiation from destroyed ships. Dr. Webb grinned. Our railguns can reach them from much farther away. At 15% light speed, we can engage from 200,000 kilometers or more. They won't even know they're under attack until the first projectiles hit. Sarah sat back down and studied the tactical information. A plan was beginning to form in her mind. Dr. Webb, I want you to focus on increasing the range and accuracy of our weapons. Dr. Harrison, I need you to analyze everything we learned about their technology. Look for weaknesses we can exploit. What about the political situation? Asked Captain Thompson. Will Earth's government accept their treaty? I've been in contact with President Morrison, Sarah said. The answer is no. Earth will not surrender its sovereignty or its military forces. We're going to politely decline their generous offer. Captain Martinez whistled softly. That means they'll send a fleet to force the issue. Yes, it does. And when they arrive, they're going to expect an easy victory against primitive humans with obsolete weapons. Sarah's expression hardened. Let's make sure they get a very different lesson than the one they're planning to teach. Over the next week, as the human fleet raced back toward Earth, Dr. Webb worked with engineering teams across all 3 ships to design improvements to their railgun systems. The weapons had originally been built to fire projectiles at about 2% of light speed, fast enough to penetrate any armor humans had ever built. But the aliens didn't use armor. They used energy shields that could stop plasma beams hot enough to melt planets, but which treated solid matter as if it didn't exist. Against that kind of defense, even humanity's primitive kinetic weapons would be devastatingly effective. The question was whether they would get the chance to prove it. 2 weeks after the meeting at Nexus Prime, long-range sensors around Earth detected the incoming alien fleet. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center at Luna Base, watching the tactical displays as 30 alien ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. They're massive, said Commander Brooks, the sensor operator. The largest ship is 3 times bigger than our battleships. Energy readings are off the charts. Sarah studied the formation on the main screen. The alien fleet moved in a perfect diamond pattern, with the largest ship at the center. Smaller vessels arranged themselves around it in precise geometric patterns that probably had some tactical meaning she didn't understand. Communications? Are they sending any messages? She asked. Yes, Admiral. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Shall I put it through? Do it. The main screen shifted to show the bridge of the alien flagship. Battleships Korthful stood in the center, his insect-like form towering over his crew. His species was different from the ones they had met before. Larger, more aggressive-looking, with thick armor plates covering their bodies. Humans of Earth, his voice boomed through the translation system. I am Battleships Korthful of the Consortium Enforcement Division. You have been given 2 weeks to consider our generous offer of protection. What is your answer? Sarah activated the communication system from Luna Base. Battleships, this is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force. After careful consideration, we must respectfully decline your offer. Humanity prefers to handle its own defense. A sound came from the alien bridge that might have been laughter. Admiral Chun, you do not understand the reality of your situation. We are not asking for your cooperation. We are informing you of how things will be. The tactical display showed the alien ships beginning to spread out, moving into what looked like an attack formation. Sarah felt her heart rate increase, but kept her voice steady. Our position remains the same, Battleships. We will not surrender our independence. Then you will learn why resistance is futile, Korthvol replied. You have 72 hours to reconsider. After that time, we will demonstrate the consequences of defying the consortium. Your primitive ships will be destroyed, and your planet will be placed under our direct control. The communication link closed. Sarah turned to her staff officers, who had been watching the exchange with grim expressions. Status report on our fleet? She asked. Captain Williams, her tactical officer, pulled up the defense grid. All 12 battleships are in position around Earth. The modifications to the railgun systems are complete. Dr. Webb's team worked miracles. Our weapons can now fire projectiles at 15% of light speed with improved accuracy and range. What about our defensive positions? We're using Earth's gravity well to our advantage, said Commander Hayes, the fleet coordinator. Our ships are positioned in a loose formation around the planet. If they want to attack Earth directly, they'll have to come through us. Sarah nodded and walked to the observation window. Earth hung below them, blue and white and beautiful. Millions of people down there were depending on her decisions in the next few hours. Dr. Webb, are you confident in the weapon modifications? The engineer looked tired but determined. The tests went perfectly, Admiral. We can engage targets out to 200,000 kilometers with devastating accuracy. The tungsten steel slugs we're using will punch through their energy shields like they're not even there. And you're certain their shields can't stop kinetic projectiles? Positive. We've run every simulation possible based on the energy signatures we recorded. Their defensive systems are designed to deflect energy weapons, plasma, lasers, particle beams. They have no protocols for dealing with physical projectiles. Admiral Chun studied the tactical display showing both fleets. The aliens maintained their position at the edge of the solar system, probably expecting the humans to surrender before the deadline. Their formation was textbook perfect for energy weapon combat. Ships spread out to avoid collateral damage, positioned to provide mutual fire support, staying at optimal range for their plasma lances. They're treating this like a training exercise, she said quietly. Captain Williams looked up from his console. Ma'am, look at their formation. It's perfect for fighting other aliens with energy weapons, but it assumes we'll engage them according to their rules. Medium range, ship-to-ship energy exchanges, clean tactical maneuvers. What are you thinking, Admiral? Sarah turned back to the group. They expect us to fight like civilized species. Energy weapons at medium range, formal battle lines, probably even surrender protocols when our shields fail. But we're not civilized by their standards. We're primitives with crude weapons. Dr. Webb grinned. And primitives don't follow the rules. Exactly. Dr. Webb, what's the maximum effective range of our railguns with the new modifications? In the vacuum of space with no atmospheric interference? About 500,000 kilometers, though accuracy drops off significantly at that distance. Sarah felt a plan forming. What if we don't wait for them to attack? What if we engage them while they're still sitting there expecting us to surrender? Captain Williams frowned. They'll see it coming. Even at 15% light speed, it takes time for projectiles to cross that distance. Will they? Sarah asked. They've never faced kinetic weapons before. They don't know what to look for. Dr. Harrison, when you analyzed their sensor systems, what were they optimized to detect? Dr. Harrison consulted his notes. Energy signatures, primarily. Their sensors are incredibly sensitive to plasma discharges, laser emissions, particle radiation. But they showed little interest in tracking physical objects smaller than asteroids. So they might not even detect our projectiles until it's too late, said Sarah. And even if they do, their defensive systems aren't designed to stop them. Commander Hayes looked concerned. Admiral, if we fire first, we'll be starting a war. Commander, they came here with 30 warships and gave us an ultimatum. The war has already started. The only question is whether we fight it on their terms or ours. Sarah walked back to the tactical display and studied the alien formation. Battle Hegemon Korthvol's flagship sat in the center, surrounded by its escorts. A perfect target for a species that had forgotten physical weapons existed. "Send a message to all ship captains," she ordered. "Prepare for combat operations. We'll wait for their 72-hour deadline to expire. Then we'll show them what human weapons can do." Over the next 3 days, the alien fleet maintained its position, broadcasting occasional messages about the futility of resistance. They seemed confident that the humans would eventually see reason and surrender. Their ships moved in slow, peaceful patterns that suggested they weren't expecting immediate combat. On Earth, the population watched the news feeds with a mixture of fear and determination. President Morrison addressed the planet, explaining that humanity would not surrender its freedom to alien overlords, no matter how advanced their technology might be. As the deadline approached, Sarah gathered with her command staff for the final briefing. The alien fleet was exactly where it had been for 3 days, maintaining formation at the edge of the solar system. "All ships report ready for combat," said Commander Hayes. "Targeting solutions have been calculated and verified. We can engage all 30 enemy vessels simultaneously." Sarah looked around the room at the faces of her officers. They were scared but determined, ready to fight for their home planet against impossible odds. "Remember," she said quietly, "they think we're primitives with toys instead of weapons. Let's show them the difference between primitive and obsolete." The 72-hour deadline expired at 1400 hours. Earth Standard Time. Battle Hegemon Korthvol stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Quantum Destroyer, watching displays that showed the pathetic human fleet still clustered around their homeworld. "Have they responded to our final communication?" he asked his tactical officer. "No, sir. Their ships remain in defensive positions around the planet. No movement, no aggressive actions." Korthvol clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. "Excellent. They are paralyzed by fear. Begin the advance. Standard battle formation, medium approach speed. We will destroy their ships one by one until they surrender." The 30 consortium ships began moving toward Earth, maintaining their perfect diamond formation. Energy flowed through their hulls as weapon systems came online. Plasma lances charged with enough power to melt mountains. Quantum disruptors that could tear apart matter at the subatomic level. On the bridge of the UES Thunderstrike, Admiral Sarah Chen watched the alien fleet begin its approach. They were moving exactly as she had hoped, slowly, confidently, maintaining formation as if they were on parade. "Distance to target?" she asked. 400,000 kilometers in closing," reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. "They're maintaining approach speed of 2,000 kilometers per hour. All ships, report status," Sarah ordered. One by one, the 12 human battleships checked in. The U.S. Liberty, Defiance, Constitution, Enterprise, Intrepid, Endeavor. Resolute, indomitable, valiant, courageous, dauntless, and fearless. Each ship carried the hopes of humanity in its railgun batteries. "Dr. Webb, weapon status?" Sarah asked. "All railgun systems are charged and ready, Admiral. Targeting computers have solutions on all 30 enemy vessels. Projectile velocity is steady at 15% light speed." Sarah took a deep breath. In the next few minutes, she would either save humanity or watch Earth fall to alien conquest. "Commander Hayes, transmit firing coordinates to all ships. Target the flagship first, then work outward through their formation." Coordinates transmitted. All ships acknowledged receipt. The alien fleet continued its stately advance, now at 300,000 kilometers. Battle Hegemon Korthvol was probably expecting the humans to break formation and flee, or perhaps broadcast desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, Admiral Chun gave the order that would change galactic history forever. All ships, fire for effect. 12 human battleships fired simultaneously. From each ship, 4 massive railguns launched tungsten steel projectiles weighing several tons each. 48 slugs accelerated to 45,000 kilometers per second in the space of a few heartbeats, racing across the void toward the alien formation. On the quantum destroyer, the sensor officer suddenly looked up from his console. "Sir, I'm detecting some kind of mass movement from the human ships. Small objects, high velocity." Korthful frowned. "Mass movement? What kind of objects?" "I'm not sure, sir. They're too small to be missiles, too fast to be debris. Velocity is... This can't be right. What is the velocity?" 15% of light speed, sir. But that's impossible for physical objects. Korthful felt the first stirring of concern. "Time to impact?" The sensor officer's compound eyes widened in alarm. 30 seconds, sir. Raise shields. All ships, defensive positions. Across the consortium fleet, energy barriers snapped into existence. Brilliant fields of contained plasma surrounded each ship, designed to absorb and deflect any energy weapon known to galactic science. The shields had never failed against conventional attacks, but the approaching projectiles were not energy weapons. The first tungsten slug hit the quantum destroyers. Shields at a significant fraction of light speed. The energy barrier, designed to stop plasma beams and particle discharges, had no effect whatsoever on the solid metal projectile. The slug passed through the shield as if it weren't there and struck the ship's hull. The impact released more kinetic energy than a nuclear explosion. The projectile punched completely through the quantum destroyer from bow to stern, venting atmosphere, plasma coolant, and exotic matter into space. Secondary explosions rippled through the ship as the tungsten slug's passage severed power conduits and ruptured containment systems. Battle hegemon. Korthful had just enough time to realize that his species had forgotten something very important about warfare before his flagship's reactor core breached and vaporized the entire forward section of the ship. 7 more alien vessels died in the first volley. Tungsten slugs moving at relativistic speeds punched through their shields and hulls like tissue paper. The aliens had built their ships to withstand energy weapons that could melt planets, but they had no defense against simple kinetic force applied with overwhelming power. Direct hits on 8 targets. Reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. Enemy flagship is destroyed. 7 escorts eliminated. Admiral Chun felt a surge of fierce satisfaction. All ships, second volley. Target the remaining vessels. On the surviving alien ships, panic spread as commanders tried to understand what had just happened. Their most advanced shields had been useless. Their flagship was gone. 8 ships destroyed in the space of 10 seconds by weapons that shouldn't even exist in modern warfare. Fleet Commander Zixthera, aboard the Eternal Radiance, frantically ordered her ship to adjust its defensive fields. Modify shield frequencies to maximum dispersion. Reverse polarity on the plasma barriers. Her tactical officer's crystal body pulsed with confusion. Commander, the projectiles weren't energy-based. They were physical objects. Our shields don't interact with solid matter. That's impossible. No civilized species uses kinetic weapons. The second human volley arrived before she could finish speaking. 12 more alien ships vanished in brilliant explosions as tungsten slugs traveling at cosmic speeds tore them apart. The remaining consortium vessels broke formation, desperately trying to escape the impossible barrage. Sir, called the sensor operator on the U-East Liberty. Enemy ships are scattering. Some are trying to turn away. Captain Thompson smiled grimly. They can run, but they can't hide. Lieutenant Chun, target the fleeing vessels. Don't let any of them escape to warn the consortium. The third volley eliminated 10 more alien ships. The survivors were now in full retreat, their weapons unfired, their formations shattered. Some tried to return fire with their plasma lances, but the human ships were too far away, and their own weapons couldn't reach across the gulf of space. Battle. Hegemon Korthful second in command. Sub-Commander Vexthal found himself in command of the 3 remaining ships. His own vessel had taken a glancing blow from a human projectile that had carved a canyon through the outer hull without hitting anything vital. All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace. He ordered, "Retreat immediately." "Sir, our jump drives need 30 seconds to charge," his navigator reported. 30 seconds they didn't have. The fourth human volley was already on its way. 2 more alien ships died before the final. Vessel managed to activate its faster-than-light drive and vanish into hyperspace. Sub-Commander Vexthal sat alone on his damaged bridge, staring at the tactical display that showed 29 empty spots where the mightiest fleet in consortium history had been just minutes before. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Thunderstrike and watched the last alien ship disappear into hyperspace. Around Earth gravity well, her 12 battleships maintained their positions, railguns still hot from firing. "Total engagement time?" she asked. 80 minutes, 37 seconds, reported Commander Hayes. Enemy casualties, 29 ships destroyed, 1 escaped. Our casualties, 0. Sarah nodded slowly. In less than 20 minutes, humanity had gone from being helpless primitives to the most feared military power in the galaxy. And they had done it with weapons the aliens considered obsolete. "Send a message to Earth Command," she ordered. "The alien fleet has been destroyed. Earth is secure. And I think we're going to have some very interesting visitors in the days ahead." 3 days after the Battle of Seoul, Sub-Commander Vexthal arrived at Nexus Prime with news that sent shockwaves through the galactic community. His damaged ship limped into the docking bay, while emergency broadcasts spread across consortium space, carrying an impossible message. 30 consortium warships had been destroyed by 3 human vessels using primitive kinetic weapons. High Counselor Vexmar materialized in the emergency session of the Consortium Council, his energy form flickering with disbelief. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as Vexthal delivered his report. The humans opened fire from extreme range, the surviving officer explained, his voice shaking with trauma. Their projectiles moved at 15% of light speed. Our shields were useless. They passed through our defensive barriers like they didn't exist. Councillor Ekvar leaned forward, his tree-like form creaking with tension. "You are saying that energy shields, which have protected our fleets for millions of years, simply failed?" "Not failed," Vexthal corrected. "Ignored. The projectiles were solid matter, not energy. Our shields are designed to deflect plasma and particle beams, not physical objects." Trade Counselor Meredith spoke up, her voice filled with confusion. "But kinetic weapons are obsolete. No species has used them for eons. Why would anyone develop defenses against such primitive technology?" "Because," said a new voice from the chamber entrance, "sometimes the old ways are the best ways." Every head turned as Admiral Sarah Chun walked into the council chamber, flanked by 2 human Marines. She wore her dress uniform and moved with the confident stride of someone who had just rewritten the rules of galactic warfare. High Counselor Vexmar's energy form pulsed with surprise. "Admiral Chun? How did you get here so quickly?" "We learned a few things about faster-than-light travel from studying your ships at Nexus Prime," Sarah replied calmly. "Dr. Webb sends his thanks for the educational opportunity." She walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at the assembled representatives. "I assume Sub-Commander Vexthal has told you what happened at Earth." I'm here to discuss new terms for human consortium relations. Councillor Vekvar stood up, his branches rustling with agitation. You destroyed 29 ships. That was an act of war. Sarah turned to face him directly. No, Councillor. That was self-defense. Your battle hegemon gave us an ultimatum. Surrender or be conquered. We chose a third option. Your weapons are barbaric, shouted another councillor. Kinetic projectiles have no place in civilized warfare. Civilized warfare, Sarah repeated slowly. Is that what you call it when you show up at someone's home with 30 warships and demand they surrender their independence? High Councillor Vexmar raised his hand for silence. Admiral, what are your terms? Sarah pulled out a datapad and placed it on the central table. Simple. Humanity wants formal recognition as a sovereign species with full rights in galactic society. We want access to trade networks, scientific exchanges, and cultural programs. And we want it as equals, not as a protectorate under someone else's protection. And in return? Asked Trade Councillor Mirdith. We won't share the technical specifications of our railgun technology with anyone else. We'll keep the galaxy's deadliest weapons in human hands, where they'll be used responsibly. The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. Representatives whispered urgently in dozens of languages, while the translation system struggled to keep up. You're threatening the entire galaxy, accused Councillor Deck. R. Sarah shook her head. I'm offering to protect it. The galaxy has enjoyed peace for millions of years because everyone had similar weapons and defenses. But what happens when someone develops new energy weapons that can penetrate your shields? What happens when raiders figure out how to counter your defensive systems? She gestured to the datapad. Humanity offers a deterrent. As long as our railguns exist, no single species can dominate the galaxy through military force. We become the ultimate defensive weapon, not for ourselves, but for everyone. High Councillor Vexmar considered this carefully. And if we refuse your terms? Then we go home and mind our own business. But if anyone comes to Earth with hostile intentions again, they'll learn the same lesson the consortium fleet did. And eventually, other species will start asking questions about why their energy weapons are suddenly ineffective against human defenses. Dr. Harrison, who had arrived with Admiral Chun, stepped forward. If I may, Admiral, the principle is simple. For millions of years, galactic warfare has been like a chess game with established rules. Everyone knows how the pieces move, so strategy becomes predictable. But humans just introduced a piece that moves in ways no one expected. We're offering to be your knights, Sarah added. Powerful, but committed to defending rather than conquering. The council session continued for hours. Representatives demanded technical details about human weapons, asked about production capabilities, and worried about the implications for galactic security. Through it all, Admiral Chun remained calm and professional, answering what questions she could while keeping the most sensitive information classified. Finally, High Councillor Vexmar called for a recess. The council will deliberate on your proposal. Admiral Chun, please wait in the diplomatic quarters while we reach a decision. As Sarah and her delegation were escorted from the chamber, she noticed something important. The guards were treating her with respect rather than suspicion. Word of the Battle of Seoul had spread quickly, and everyone now understood that humanity was not a primitive species to be patronized. 6 hours later, Admiral Chun was summoned back to the council chamber. High Councillor Vexmar's energy form had stabilized into what Sarah had learned indicated formal announcement mode. The Galactic Trade Consortium formally recognizes humanity as a sovereign species with full membership rights, he declared. We accept your proposal for mutual defense cooperation and look forward to peaceful relations between our peoples. Sarah nodded graciously. Thank you, High Councillor. I think this is the beginning of a very productive partnership." As she left Nexus Prime aboard the Thunderstrike, Admiral Chun reflected on how quickly things had changed. 3 weeks ago, humanity had been an unknown species with primitive weapons. Now they were the galaxy's newest military superpower, courted by ancient civilizations and respected by species that had ruled the stars for millions of years. Dr. Webb joined her on the bridge as Earth came into view ahead of them. "So, Admiral, what do you think happens next?" Sarah smiled as she watched the blue planet grow larger on the screen. "I think we're about to get very busy. Every species in the galaxy is going to want to either ally with us or study our weapons. Some will probably try to steal our technology, and others will attempt to develop counters to kinetic weapons. Are you worried about that?" "Not really," Sarah replied. "It took the galaxy millions of years to forget that physical projectiles could be effective weapons. By the time they remember how to defend against them, we'll have developed something new that they've forgotten about." Dr. Webb laughed. "The advantages of being primitive?" "The advantages of being human," Sarah corrected. "We don't follow the rules because we don't know what they are. And sometimes that's exactly what the galaxy needs." As the Thunderstrike entered Earth orbit, Admiral Chun looked down at her homeworld with pride. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through advanced technology or ancient wisdom, but through the simple application of kinetic energy at relativistic speeds. Sometimes the simplest solutions really were the best ones.